Hello and welcome back for another Torah Tuesday. Today we're in Exodus chapter 5, verses 3 through 5. I'm going to begin by reading my translation of these verses from the Hebrew. For context on this, make sure to watch last week's video so that you can see the initial confrontation between Moses and Aaron and Pharaoh. Verse 3 begins, "But they said, 'The God of the Hebrews has summoned us. Please let us go a 3-day journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to Yahweh our God, lest he attack us with plague or sword.' But the king of Egypt said to them, 'Why, Moses and Aaron, are you freeing the people from their work? Go back to your burden bearing.' And Pharaoh said, 'They are numerous now, the people of the land, and you made them rest from their burden bearing.'" The first thing to note is that Moses and Aaron are framing their request in a way that highlights for Pharaoh the loss that he is going to experience if he does not obey Yahweh's command. God has asked them to go on this 3-day pilgrimage into the wilderness to worship him, and if they don't, they risk his wrath. We've already looked at the troubling passage in chapter 4 where Yahweh tries to kill Moses for his failure to comply with Yahweh's demands. So Moses and Aaron know that this is serious business. When God says something, we need to obey. And they're saying to Pharaoh, if we don't do this, we might experience a disastrous plague or the sword may come against us. Both of these are pointing forward to what Pharaoh himself will experience because he fails to respond to Yahweh's demands. In chapter 9, verse 3, the livestock of Pharaoh experience a plague. And in chapter 11, verse 5, the firstborn of the Egyptians experience the sword of the Lord, and they die as a result. So both of these examples that they raise should give Pharaoh pause, and they introduce him to the drastic consequences that he will experience if he ignores Yahweh's command. There's a really interesting play on words going on in verse 4, where Pharaoh asks, "Are you freeing the people from your work?" The word freeing in Hebrew is para, which is the same root letters in the name Paro or Pharaoh. And so this is an implicit acknowledgement that what Moses and Aaron are requesting or demanding is the sort of thing a Pharaoh might demand or request. And so Pharaoh hastens to reassert his authority by saying, "Hey, get back to work." But it's very interesting that when he is accusing them of acting inappropriately, he says, "You made them rest from their burden bearing." And resting from work, the only other place that those two concepts are put side by side is in Genesis 2, verses 2 and 3, when Yahweh rests from his work of creation. And so this is a really interesting x-ray on the state of Pharaoh's heart. He is upset that someone would be resting from their work, and yet God created the world to have such a rhythm that we work and then we rest. And Pharaoh's policies of exploitation don't allow for that rhythm. So he's setting himself up against the way God designed for things to go. So the word for making them rest is Shabbat here. So he accuses them, "You're trying to Shabbat them. You're trying to make them Shabbat or keep the Sabbath." We haven't had an official command yet to keep the Sabbath in Scripture, but this anticipates that Genesis 1 was meant to be a pattern for the human work week. Leon Kass, in his really great book on Exodus, notes that this dialogue highlights the central problem of Exodus that cries out for reversal, namely that Pharaoh's ignorance of Yahweh is what leads inevitably to oppression. In order for Israel to be free, Pharaoh's going to have to encounter Yahweh and come to know him. And as I mentioned last week, this idea of "so that you will know that I am Yahweh" is the whole point of the plague sequence. It's the top of the agenda going forward. So Pharaoh's initial refusal in this scene lays the groundwork for Yahweh's dramatic demonstration of his own power in the chapters that follow. So our takeaways this week are Yahweh's divine authority, the way he is expressing that through Moses and Aaron, and Pharaoh's acknowledgement that his own policies are at odds with Yahweh's policies. It's not going to end well for him, and we already get some hints of that in this passage. I hope you have a great week. We'll see you next week for another Torah Tuesday.